Right.
It's basically the exact opposite, and yet kind of the same as like my commander. The year after my stillbirth, like on the anniversary of what would have been her birthday, was our next drill. And my commander expected me to show up to that drill and just do my job. He expected me to drive 5 hours away from home to go to this drill, to go work a 10-hour day, 2 days, that same weekend, and then drive 5 hours back home like nothing had happened. And my supervisor went into his office like almost every day for a week and was like, she is not going, it doesn't matter what you tell her, it doesn't matter what punitive action you raise against her, she will not be at this drill. I guarantee you that. You need to give her this drill off.
And a little back history. So obviously we have Aeryn here as a guest, and she is here as a guest because she did say she was comfortable sharing her story, and she did have a child who unfortunately was born stillborn, and she was part of the military. Veterans in the house. and that has the audacity then to ask you on such an important day.
Yeah.
To hey, come in and function and do all the things, and never mind that this is an anniversary of a day that completely changed your life. Like,
well, and going forward, the years after that, because generally our drills were almost always the first weekend of each month, with the exception of January, because New Year's Eve, New Year's, all that kind of good stuff. So generally, for January, it was the second weekend of the month, which happened to be almost always including January 11th. And so going forward into year 2, year 3, year 4, I did have to go to drill on those days. And they very much quickly came to the realization of Aeryn's going to do the bare minimum that day, that weekend. Aeryn's not going to go out of her way to build this amazing forecast. She's not going to add all those little things during, she will do exactly what she is told to. She will not, take initiative during any of those. No. She's going to do the exact thing we tell her or ask her to do. She's going to go back to her dorm room. She's not going to interact with any of us. And then she's going to go home. That's what she's going to do.
So for the listeners, could you give us a little history on your history with your herstory with going into the Air Force, meeting your husband, and conceiving your baby, and just your story. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's summarize about 4 years. So originally I come from a very military heavy family, across all branches, but predominantly Army. Never wanted to be in the military. Already knew it wasn't my thing. I'm not big on physical anything. But I also did not want to work on anything super technical, and I also didn't want to sit at a desk all day every day. So there's not really much left in the military besides one of those things. And I just didn't want to do it. But when you also want to go to an art school that costs $50,000 a year, SCAD, I'm looking at you, you kind of need something to pay for that. And my, single mom, as hard as she worked, nope, there was no way that was going to happen. So National Guard it was, because I still wanted to be a full-time student once all my training was done. That bit me in the butt. That didn't really happen, but that's a topic for another time. So I was originally going to do Army Guard, and then every single military member of my family was like, don't join the Army. Especially the Army ones. They were like, don't do it. Don't. No, please don't. Go Air Force. And just not Army or Marines. Go Air Force. Go Air Force. Please go Air Force. So I was like, okay, I'll go Air Force. And the Air Force was like, we'll pay 100% for Florida of your public education. And I was like, okay, I'll take that. So joined the Air National Guard, went to BMT at Lackland, just like everybody else, then went to tech school at Keesler. Weather, what's up? I see you. And while I was there, I made the dumb decision to be an airman leader, which for those of you that don't know, that's the trainees at tech school who get to sort of kind of yell at and march around all of their classmates to and from class.
Why do I feel like you enjoyed that?
I actually did not. I hated that, and my future husband was a big reason why. Because somebody liked to stand at the front of his flight and just yammer on with his friend, because they're giants, and they're like way up there. I'm like, shut up. And then they just wouldn't. And I was like, I hate all of you. But yeah, so I was whether he was PML. For those of you that are not familiar with those tech schools, that basically meant that we were at Keesler forever. And we called everybody else Pop-Tarts because they just pop in and out, in and out, in and out. I had about 4 or 5 roommates. So eventually, after a whole bunch of other mess, started, a little fling with this PML guy. And then, yeah. And, it wasn't anything serious, but I did tell him because, I didn't do the whole, mushy feely.
Wait, how long have you guys been married now?
What year is it right now?
2019.
So next year is going to be 7 years.
It wasn't anything serious, y'all.
No.
You know what? Don't even at me right now.
Started as the babe, but always like, hey.
Okay, so back to your little fling that was nothing. Okay,
Yeah. So I didn't do the whole I can't. Y'all see and hear what I So I did tell him, hey, I don't really do the whole touchy-feely talk, but if I ever tell you I need to talk to you in that type of way, you need to drop whatever you are doing and give me your full attention. And he remembers it differently, but how I remember it going was that I did that for weeks. And we had a friend who was graduating at the time, so he was like, okay, let me go spend all my time with them, and can we get to this, whatever this is, after they graduate, after they leave? And I was like, no, and I gave you your shot, so screw you. And I just basically cut off all communication. Well, he wasn't happy about that, and he was like, but no. And so we did this thing that we had to do as airman leaders, where basically there's a desk inside each of the dorm buildings, and we have to sit there on the weekends, and it's basically an entry control point, and we have to man them.
Oh, it's really fun.
Tiff and I have a story for an entry control point.
And so anytime I had to do that in his building, he would come down there with a huge bag of Skittles, couple of Fantas, and just sit there, hoping I would talk to him. I never did.
Like Torrin.
Yes, that is so my husband. And I would ignore him, and all the MTLs would get pissed that he was just down there loitering. And I was like, "What do you want me to do about it?" But no, I'm not his keeper. I literally cannot send him back to his room and make sure that he goes there. He's a male, I'm female, I'm not allowed up there. What do you want? So anyway, fast forward a few months, and I'm feeling gross, and it's changing the seasons. I'm like, okay, getting a stomach bug, all these other airmen get me sick. I ain't down for it. So I go sick call. They send me over to the actual MTF, because they're
Military treatment facility.
Yeah, that thing, the hospital. And they, start taking, all these samples and everything. Well, what they don't tell you in tech school, if any of you are in tech school right now and you're listening to this, if you are a female airman and you go in with any symptoms whatsoever, they will test you for pregnancy. They will not tell you that they're doing that, but they will test you for it, because that's what they did to me. So, but they also don't tell the lab techs that.
And they tell you you're pregnant.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many times I went in for a stomach flu something, and they're like, "You're pregnant." I was like, "No."
Yeah.
Well, you're pregnant. No, I'm not.
Me, they didn't bring it up at all, and they didn't tell the lab techs that I didn't request this. So this lab tech calls me up a couple weeks later and starts going off congratulations.
Wait, a couple weeks later?
This was how many years ago, ma'am?
Sorry. Okay, my bad. Tell your story. My bad.
Thank you.
Yeah.
However long.
Trigger.
However long later, this lab tech calls me and is like, "Congratulations, you're pregnant." And I'm like, What do you mean?
Congratulations. No.
Yeah, like, it was basically, like, I felt like my whole world shattered. Because I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, this is not possible. Granted, it is possible when you suck at taking your birth control pills.
Mm.
Yeah, it's very possible. So then...
Yeah.
We'll get to that in a minute. So I had the joy of calling my mom, and my mom, shout out to Shelly Barker, best mom in the history of everything.
Shout out to Shelly.
Hi,
Mom.
And she was so just like, whatever you decide to do, I'm here for you. I love you. What are your thoughts right now? Because of course she's not with me, so there's like limited anything that she can do. I've still got
provide verbal support
and sending as much love your direction, aiming towards Florida, and is like,
yeah,
I love you.
And she's just like, I've got a few months left of tech school, so we're just like, okay, we just gotta deal with this. Unfortunately, as soon as they said you don't have to do PT anymore, I was like, cool, I won't. Yeah, don't do that.
don't get pregnant.
Well, yeah, don't get pregnant unless you plan on getting pregnant, but then also don't stop doing PT completely.
PT, physical training.
Yeah.
But listen to your OBGYN about what you can and cannot do.
Yes.
Anyway, well then of course, I'm not personally, I don't think I would ever choose to have an abortion, so I did not choose that for that one, for that pregnancy. So that left me with, okay, there's literally only one option for who could be the dad. Great. I have to go talk to him again. So.
Did you get Skittles?
Okay, so here's the thing.
You tasted the rainbow.
During a large portion of my pregnancy, I craved berry Skittles and Fanta. And I've since told him that was entirely your fault. I never before wanted that.
That was definitely his DNA.
Yes, 100%. So anyway, and I flat out told him, I said, no, we're not getting back together. No, this is not, like, I don't forgive you, like, I'm not in a good mood. And I flat out told him that I was planning on putting the baby up for adoption. Because I was 19, 20 years old, like, I was not ready to be raising no kid. Like, I still thought I was going to be a full-time art student. Like, I had plans.
She was trying to have a hot girl summer.
Yes. I'm trying to have that, like, typical college experience, like, hello. And I was like, no, this is not what I want. He's like, well, I don't want you to put it up for adoption. I'm like, well, unless you know some laws that I don't. I live in Florida, and I know for a fact the Floridian laws favor me. So what are you going to do about it? And I was very standoffish about it. And unbeknownst to me, he basically got my mom's contact info once I went back home to Florida, and was like texting her throughout the whole thing. And like every single month when he got paid, he'd be like, do you need anything? Is there anything that you need? Is there any way I can help? And y'all know now that that's very typical him. Like, once
He's behind the scenes always.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Oh, I got like 10 Christmas presents that year. So, anyway, I don't really remember what, I think it was just like too complicated. I'm not sure what exactly made me change my mind from putting the baby up for adoption to keeping it. But at some point that transition happened. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that, I had my mom, I had, at the time, both of my grandparents. Basically, I was kind of that saying it takes a village. That's how I was raised. So I knew I had like a whole village of people to back me up, and that will make so much more, like, that will be even more evident later on in this story. So I think that was like a huge part of that. And so I got through my 4 months of follow-on training at Camp Blanding. Shout out to the 131st training flight. Y'all are awesome. I miss you guys. And then I was released back to my home unit, which basically they were like, yeah, you big pregnant, so, and you've only got like a couple months left. Okay, they weren't wrong though. Like I missed out on like 3 incentive flights during my last 2 weeks of follow-on training because they were like, yeah, we can't take you up. You're too pregnant. And I was like, dang it! And none of my other classmates wanted to go. And I was like, you guys suck so bad. But I got to wear basically pajamas for my blues, so I wasn't totally mad about that. And so we went through Christmas.
And can I just say, pregnant service members are just the cutest. They're just so cute.
We don't feel cute.
Well, you guys are the cutest. And I
Yeah,
saw
but
your
they-
pictures, and you were adorable. It was so cute. Okay, anyway, sorry.
They don't.
Right?
Like, that camo doesn't make good pregnancy
Oh,
size.
and
you just feel like you're just like,
My first
"Wah."
shirt had to order about 10 different uniforms before they finally got me a maternity set in my size. Like, he had getting like regular, like, I got a pair of pants that fit no one. Until I saw my new supervisor later on in life, and I was like, oh, they might fit her. She's the size of an American Girl doll. Yeah, okay. Sorry if you're watching this.
But anyways, you went through Christmas.
Yeah, so, fun fact, Torin, my husband, myself, and our daughter all had the same due date. Which got really creepy because we realized, oh, now we know when our parents were doing it.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm so glad. I'm so glad you played. That's so funny. We did not.
When was the due date?
January 24th.
24 January.
Yeah.
Oh, my brother was born 2 days before that.
So now I know when your parents are doing it too.
Right, we just know our parents were doing it. Well, I was born February 13th, so my
Right.
parents were doing it around the same time too.
Well, it's funny because Torin was born a month early. I was born a month late. So it's like, all right, maybe she'll come out on time. You know? So we're getting to January, and I was like, okay, I'm ready to not be so huge anymore. Like, I was done. I was over it. Thankfully, I got to go back to my civilian OBGYN because let me tell you, my faith in military OBGYNs is kind of in the toilet. No offense to the few out there that, you know, do a good job and do due diligence. My husband's mom was one of those. She's amazing. And the whole way she's like, did they do this? Have they done this test? Have they, what's going on? I was like, I don't know, Mary. They stick me with needles and then they tell me anything bad that's going on. And if everything's good, they say everything's good. I don't know. And so we get to January 10th and I'm watching TV, and generally one of my favorite memories is that, so generally she would have her toes up here and her head was down here. And I could tell because it would like be like pressure if she couldn't get her head the way that she wanted it. And she was like, oh, and then the toes would start wiggling. I was like, okay, are you settled? Are you settled? And then when the toes would stop wiggling, I was like, okay, you're settled. I get to relax now. It's like, I got to stretch, give her room. And then, okay, I get to watch TV again.
Oh
We
man,
good.
women's bodies are amazing.
Oh, I've watched too many videos now, and now that I know where all my organs went that whole time, I was like, oh god.
No.
That happened.
ignorance is bliss.
It is. It really is. Like,
I
ooh.
purposely avoided all those kind of videos. I avoided birth videos. I
Right?
avoided everything. I was like, I don't want to know.
Right?
And then in the hospital, they had a mirror above me, and I'm like,
Oh no.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's my nightmare.
I didn't think I would laugh this.
See, we're taking humor into it now. Yeah. You're gonna cry from sadness and happiness all at the same time. You're welcome. Yeah. So I don't even, like, obviously I don't remember what I was watching. I'm not even sure what time of day it was. But I just remember I was like, I think I was home alone, so I think it was like during the day when my mom was at work, because I was back living with my mom at this point. And he was actually in Mountain Home, which is in the middle of nothing, Idaho. Like, literally the Canadian border is like 2 hours away. And then there's nothing else. Not even mountains. They're off in the distance.
No, there's mountains.
I know.
I'm just too childish.
And potatoes.
I'm not even sure there were potatoes there. Mountain Home is nothing. Right?
childish.
So, but like I said, we weren't together at the time. So I was sitting there watching TV, and I realized, I was like, she hasn't moved in a while. And she was very active, like very, very active. And I was like, this is weird. So I called up my OBGYN's office, and I was like, hey, it's been very quiet. And they were like, okay, drink some ice water and take a 10-minute walk. Call us back if nothing changes. So I drank this huge glass of freezing ice cold water. I am like freezing my little buns off at this point, walking in a circle in my house, just kind of waiting, just kind of assessing things. About 10, 12 minutes go by, nothing changes. So I'm like, hey, nothing's changed. And they're like, okay, come in and we'll take a look. So I think my mom was home by this. I don't remember how I got to the hospital, but my mom was there, I was there. We go to the hospital. The hospital was like 2 minutes away from our house. So I'm like, not panicking, but I'm like, the antsiness is starting to come in. And it's like, okay, what's going on? Like, what's happening? So they go in, they do the whole, like, ultrasound, fetal heart rate thing. Except, unlike most times when you go in for that stuff, they started with you not being able to see anything on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And they start with, like, the stethoscopes and everything, so that you can't hear anything. And they're like, they very quickly did the, like, not the worst thing that they could have done, because there's really no way that I think they could have handled this and I wouldn't have caught on. I'm too observant for that, and I was too, like, okay, what's going on?
You were already on it.
Yeah. And so they start doing this thing where it's like, because they're not saying anything, their lack of reaction
It's saying everything.
says everything. And I'm like trying to keep myself calm and trying not to freak out the whole time, and it's like not working. And then so we're sitting there, and it's like one of those like big wards where it's got like multiple beds, but there's like nobody else in there at the time. And then one of the techs comes over and is like, your OBGYN would like to see you back at her office. Because this was a hospital, this wasn't her office. They're on the same road, thankfully, and very close to each other, but they weren't the same. So she has us meet her back at her office, because my civilian OBGYN, her name was Sharon. So if you live in Orange Park, get Sharon. She's amazing, she's wonderful, I love her. And she basically broke the news to us in her office. So she was like, there's no heartbeat. She basically laid out the options, because I was 37 and a half weeks, which at 36 weeks, that's full term. So for those of you who have never been pregnant, never had a friend who was pregnant, anything like that, 40 weeks is the actual like full gestation period, which is actually 10 months, not 9 months. I think they should always say 9 months, because it generally takes a month before you know. At 37 and a half weeks, full term, I had several options as to basically like how to, basically like how to deliver her. So I could have a C-section, I could deliver her vaginally, I could, do it with medication, without medication. And I very quickly, Sharon basically laid out like, you can do a C-section, and it is possible to have vaginal delivery after C-section. However, it is more difficult, and there are complications with that, and all this kind of stuff. And she advised against it, but she made it very clear that anything I decided was my decision. My mom, who was there, made it very clear that it was not her decision. It was everyone there was like, it is all your decision. And so I very quickly decided I don't want to feel it, but I also don't want it to be a C-section. She was like, okay. So Sharon was like, I want you guys to go home, pack up anything that you think you'll need. And I want you to come back to the hospital tonight, and we'll check you in, because I actually was 2 centimeters dilated. So I had actually started going into labor at some point and just had no idea, which makes sense because my mom was like way more dilated and way farther into labor when I was starting to be born and also had no idea. Like apparently that's just a thing, we don't feel it. Mm-hmm. So we did that, and one of the first things that my mom asked me when we got home was, do you want to call him or do you want me to? And I was like sobbing, so I just shook my head no. And she was like, okay. And kudos to my mom, she held it down so hard. I have no idea how she did this, no idea. So she calls him, and I found out later. So she calls the number they gave for his lab. His first shirt answers, and she's like, I need to speak with him. I'm the mother of the woman who's carrying his baby. But his baby's mama. See, humor and heartbreak all together. So he gets on the phone, and she barely gets it out before he apparently just dropped the phone. And his first shirt picked it up and said, he can't talk right now. And mom was like, that's fine. And thankfully, his first shirt, I don't even remember this man's name. I have no idea where he is now. But if you're listening to this and you know that's you, you're awesome. He basically was like, you're going to go back to your room, you're going to pack up your shit, and if you're not on a flight tonight, and I find out about it, I will beat your ass.
Kudos to good leadership.
Right?
We need to talk about your motive.
And then I think it was my mom that called his mom. And again, I have no idea how.
Your
right?
mom's the OG.
I have no idea how my mom made it through this. I do know that later, like, thankfully, she also had outlets and people that, you know, she got to have her outpouring with and everything. But it's like, it's a chain reaction. It's a ripple, you know? It's like, you have the center of it where it's happening and the ripple that supports that, and then you've got the ripple that supports that one. It's a whole community. It really does take a community to support people through times like this. And so his mom got on a plane, flew out there. He's on a plane, flying out there. He got a red eye overnight. I think his mom did the same. I don't remember how people got there, but people got there. So I got checked in that night.
Real quick, for anybody who doesn't know what a red eye is.
Oh, it's an overnight, like,
Midnight flight.
Yeah.
You should try to sleep on the plane. You should try.
So for anyone who ends up in a situation similar to this, don't ever do what my husband did. He did not eat anything from the moment he got the phone call until, like, after.
And it's probably gonna be hard, but you gotta
Yeah.
you gotta put food in your system.
Yeah, you have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to do those things.
You go into like survival mode to where like your brain doesn't even think about eating or sleeping.
Right.
Yeah.
And your mom went into mom mode completely. It was like
I'm gonna handle everything.
like you sit, I do, we'll get through this.
Yeah.
And then after fact she's like, oh no, we did it.
Well, and like, so my mom wasn't even the only person that was being, so we get checked into the hospital. My mom had made a couple of phone calls, and then from those phone calls, more phone calls are being made. Because again, giant community. And when I got checked into the hospital shortly thereafter, I literally, so Orange Park Hospital, for any of you who live in Northeast Florida, it has maternity suites. So I had a fairly good sized private room with its own bathroom. And we had, I think, at the highest count, between 17 and 20 something people in my room. Yeah, every nurse that came in was like taking it back. They were like, oh God, that's a lot of people. And about 4 or 5 of them either were currently at the time or had previously been in the OBGYN field. So there were a lot of people constantly judging and evaluating everything that was happening to me.
They felt like they were in school all over
Right.
again.
Right? They're like, ooh, these poor people. And then, like, just shortly before that, we had my baby shower. So there was a shit ton of baby stuff at home. And so shortly after I got checked in, my mom made a phone call to one of our friends and was like, hey, can you go, like, just get rid of it? I don't care what you do with it, just get it away. And they literally cleaned out that entire house in a single day.
Oh my gosh.
Of like everything. It was gone. And like kudos to this one. She literally kept it in her home, which was already like overflowing with stuff. So yeah, well, so overnight, I actually had a nurse who, like, a lot of people, when they, like, talk about this or when they, like, hear about it, they're like, oh, I can't imagine, or, like, they do that thing where they say something like, you know, oh, I understand, when they've had a similar situation but not the same, and you just left there thinking, no, you don't.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah. She actually did, because she was, like, I was still up, and it was, like, really late at night. She was the night shift nurse, and she was sitting there holding my hand, and she told me about how she has had several pregnancies, and over half of them were not successful. And when I say several, I mean it's over a dozen. And she has several living, beautiful children, who were all, like, my age or, like, not much younger. But she also had several who she either never got to meet or only got to meet briefly. And I was like, I can't imagine, like, trying over and over and over and over and over again. Like, that is completely incomprehensible to me. But, like, with his mom sleeping on the couch, my mom having, you know, just left, basically because she had to, and him, you know, no, he was the one sleeping on the couch, and his mom was with my mom back at our place, and, you know, just, like, you know, hearing somebody who literally had been in my shoes, the exact same situation, was just like, And for those of you who are under the umbrella of Christian religion, you will appreciate this bit of anecdote. I actually have several aunts and uncles who were states away, who at literally that exact same time that this nurse was telling me this, they were just praying so hard for somebody who could understand me. And I, to this day, will swear up and down that that nurse was an angel. Like, yeah, I get that she's a real person too. Oh,
damn it, Aeryn.
You know, I gotta keep you on your toes.
There's definitely something, like, on the Christian side of things and where I fall, that there's things and it's God's timing, and when you need to hear something and your heart truly needs it, like, you will hear it.
Yeah.
Whether it's like a person passing you or just like a touch from a stranger, and then you're just like, oh, I really needed that.
Yeah. And I really needed that one. So the next day, nothing had changed, still 2 centimeters, because for those of you that don't know, labor begins when the baby actually sends chemical, like, stuff out to the mom, to the uterus, and that's what kickstarts. It's not the mom in the uterus that does it, it's the baby. And so if the baby is no longer able to send those chemical messages, then nothing's really gonna change. So they got the anesthesiologist in, shot me up with everything, got me all good to go, good to get ready, gave me the stuff that chemically starts the,
It induces you.
Yeah.
Pitocin, right?
Something like that.
All you medical people, tell us what that chemical is. Thank you very much. You know, we waited, kept waiting. Nothing much was changing. I don't really remember all of it. I do remember, like, his mom was getting, like, frustrated with things. Like, we had people out of the waiting room, because this is part where, like, all my friends and family, like, unless I gave the go-ahead, and even then there was, like, a limit to how many people could be in there. So it was really just him, my mom, and his mom. I was like, those are the only people allowed in while we're waiting for things to really get going. And I told them, I said, you know, my mom asked me, she's like, do you want me in here when you're, like, actually, like, and I was like, not really. And she was like, that's fine. It's okay. I don't need to be. And I was like, I love you so much.
Shelly, man.
Oh, she is seriously, I told y'all, the best mom in the history of moms. And so the epidural wore off. I'm, like, in a ridiculous amount of pain. I'm not happy about it. At this point, I'm just, like, cursing everybody out, just like everybody. And thankfully, no, the nurses are like having a fit about it. I think it helped that Mary was literally standing at my shoulder, like glaring at him, like, say something. I dare you. Like, Mary Garcia is not a woman to mess with. Just saying. And so eventually they get him back up there, shoot me up some more, and he gives me like this oxy and morphine like cocktail thing.
Did you get the button?
No.
You got to choose?
Oh no, no, because he did the next day of epidural, but it takes a while for it to kick in, and so in the meantime, he gave me this like thing directly into my IV, and it was like, ooh, I can taste colors. I can see sounds. I know the answer to all of the universe. 42. So you understand that reference, yeah.
I got you.
And so very quickly after that, things start going. So the moms leave, and it's just like one nurse in and out, my OBGYN, and the future husband holding my leg, watching this whole thing. I can't feel anything at this point. Thank God. So she comes out, and thankfully Sharon is talking like the whole time. Because one thing that you don't think about is how quiet it's going to be. Like, there's no sound. There's nothing happening. And so they took her away to get cleaned up, and literally Sharon starts sewing me back up, and she kind of looks over, she's like, so what birth control do you want to try after this? Like, keeping me, like, engaged and distracted. And he's sitting there holding my leg, and he's just watching her do this, looking up at me like, you don't feel anything?
Oh, Tori for the way.
Yeah, he was so disturbed. He was just like, oh God.
I've seen some things.
Oh, yeah. His lack of sleep and lack of food, everyone thought he was going to pass out, but he was like, nope, I got this. I'm strong.
At this point, maybe it's a good thing he didn't have food.
Possibly.
Again, I've seen the things.
And we were both like fairly fine, fairly okay, and Sharon like left. And then she like kind of stuck her head back in. They were like, and she was like, hey, they cleaned her up. Do you guys want to see her? And we were like, yeah. And so they brought her in, and they had her in like this little outfit. And we, of course, break them down, like, hard. And she was so tiny, like, she was about, like, this big. And she was so tiny, and, like, she's got her little cone head. And her face is all, like, red and purple and everything, because, babies don't come out pretty. they come out looking like weird little alien things.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Love kind of makes it cloudy, though.
Oh, yeah. And we actually got to take pictures with her. And so for those of you watching, on the video, you'll see, I'm not really sure where you guys are going to put it yet, but there's at least one picture that I know we're going to include, which is of his hand, my hand, and then her hand on top. And it's the one I post it every single year in January on what would have been her birthday. So yeah, we got that chance. His mom took pictures with her. We asked my mom if she wanted to, and that was the one time that she was like, I can't do that. Because my mom is a lot like you, which is why I'm so surprised that she was like held it down when I was like freaking out. But she was like, yeah, I can't make it through that. And I was like, that's fine. And unbeknownst to me, because I didn't get to go home that night, because I had to like recover and everything. So they moved me to a different room for recovery. So I stayed overnight, he stayed overnight on the couch next to me, and then we got to go home the next day. So unbeknownst to me, that same friend who like was in charge of cleaning out the house of all the baby stuff, when she came back to the hospital the day that I was induced, she pulled that same nurse, the angel nurse, aside and was like, what can we do? And specifically asked someone who had been through it, like, what do we as the family do? And she said the one bit of advice that she gave her was, don't let her leave here empty-handed. So she was like, well, what does that mean? She's like, just give her something, anything to hold. because she won't be able to take that baby home. You know, the baby doesn't go with her. And so she went to the gift shop and got my little moof in there and brought her in, and I lost my shit. Oh, it was bad. But yeah, I slept with her during my recovery night. She literally stayed with me for like a month. Like, I didn't go anywhere without her. If I had to go somewhere out of the house, she was in the car. She was in the car. My mom thought it was the dumbest thing. She was like, what the? I was like, I'm coming down off the drugs. Don't judge me. Like, shut up. It's my comfort creature. So yeah, and then I went, when I went home that night, like, obviously we still weren't together. Like, this is all brand new. So he had been sleeping in the guest room. And, I'm asleep. I woke up in like the middle of the night and I was like shivering, but I was also like sweating. And I was like, what is going on? Because I had my hospital socks on, I had like sweatpants, I had like 2 shirts on, I was buried under like 5 blankets. I was like, why am I freezing cold, but I'm also sweating? What is happening? And so I like texted my mom because I like couldn't even get out of my bed. I was like shaking so hard. And she comes in there and she's like, yeah, I think you're coming off of the drugs. And I was like, oh crap. And she's like, well, you need to keep warm. And I love you, but I don't think you want me like laying here all night. And so she suggested to have him come just lay in the bed. Like, he doesn't have to touch me or anything, just lay in the bed to provide body heat. And I was like, yeah, I guess. Because I was like delirious. I was like, I don't know.
And husbands are good at that. They're like furnaces. Yeah. So
he claims I'm the first and he just reflects it. But
if that's what it takes. Like,
yeah. And so eventually, like, family was, extended family, that the few that hadn't been notified were notified. And, we stayed off social media for a while. And when it came to, like, what do you want to... So let me backtrack a little bit. So obviously, I haven't mentioned, like, a cause for this because we didn't know the cause. Like, there was no, like... oh, obviously this is what happened. Because up until that point, as far as, anybody knew, the pregnancy had gone completely normally, without hitch, everything was great, everything was fine. And so we wanted to know what had happened. And we asked about it, and they said, so an autopsy in this situation will be about $5,000. And we were like, okay, well, let's look into our SGLI, which is the service, what is it?
Service Members Group Life Insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's the life insurance you get as a military member. Unfortunately, the payout that they give for someone who was, quote, not alive is not $5,000. It's nowhere near that. And I have been up and down in my anger with that, and I've just kind of moved on from that one. But so we weren't able to do an autopsy, and we still don't know what happened. We will probably never know what happened. And so eventually got to the point where we had to decide what we wanted to do with her body. And we're like, well, we're both in the military, and he's in Idaho, I'm in Florida. We don't, he's from Texas and Louisiana, but he, like, also lived in, like, he's an Army brat, and
there's no home.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I don't want to make him visit Florida every single time that he wants to, like, pay respects to her or anything. So we decided to have her cremated. And so we found a funeral home and all this kind of stuff, and they gave us all these resources, including this amazing website, which I can't remember what it is, and I really wish I could. But it's for memorial jewelry, and that's actually where I got the necklace that I wear every January 11th, and I sometimes wear it just like when I want to feel close to her. And so it actually, you send, they send you the jewelry, you take it to a funeral home, and they fill it with the ashes. So I have one, he has one, my mother has one, his mother has one, and my best friend has one. and so we can all carry little pieces of her with us wherever we go. And because people didn't know that we were getting these done, that same friend, JC, I love you. So we had a store in Florida called Things Remembered, and they make like, memorial stuff. And they actually had dog tags made for him that say, "Keep me near to your heart," and they have her initials and what would have been her birthday. And so if he wears anything, this is the one that he wears most often. And I'm really glad that they did that, because if a handful of years later, one of his coworkers, the exact same thing happened. He was separated from his wife at the time, and I can't remember if it was a miscarriage or a stillbirth, and no one in the lab knew what to do. Everyone was freaking out. Everybody was like, what do we do? And he immediately was just like, I need to go order him something. Like, he needs something to, like, memorialize this. And he basically just contacted the guy and was like, hey, what was your child's name? What kind of information do you want on this? And was like, just let me know where to send it. Let me know if you need anything. Here's my wife's number in case your wife needs somebody to talk to. And he told me about it later. He's like, I hope that was okay. I was like, yes, 100% yes. And I think that, Tiff said, I also hate that phrase, everything happens for a reason. I hate when people say it. Now, years later, looking back, do I believe it? Yes. I truly believe that me and Torin went through this for the same reason that nurse went through all of hers. Is so that we can find other people who have been through it, or who are going through it, or who will go through it, and we can be there, and we can be the people who, when it happens, we catch them.
Yeah, you're somebody else's angel.
And I have a friend who I won't name, but they were trying to get pregnant, and they finally did, and we were all excited. It was like, cool, I get to plan a baby shower, I get to do this, I get to do that. And only a few months later, she had a miscarriage. And unfortunately, her husband was at work, so I went to the hospital with her, and I sat with her when they did the whole non-reaction thing. And she just kept looking at me like, what does this mean? Was that reaction mean? What are they doing? And I was like, there's no guarantee that it means anything. There's no guarantee that it doesn't mean anything. And I just kept holding her hand, and I just kept telling her there's no guarantee what any of it means. And then when they confirmed what we already suspected, I drove her home, called her husband, basically I got to be my mom. Mm-hmm. But not quite the same, because that's not the person that I birthed. That's not the person that I raised going through this. And I'm even more astounded by my mom, because my mom never went through this. My mom never had miscarriage. My mom didn't have a stillbirth. My mom didn't lose a child to SIDS. She very explicitly told me that never happened to her. And she had not, she probably did know several people that happened to, but she didn't know that it had happened to them. And so for me to be her first person that she's she knows it's happening, was oof. So yeah, it's heavy, it's hard, and it sucks. But it was going back to work sucked really bad. But at first it wasn't too bad, because I was basically just making up drills. And then they were like, hey, so we need you to go to OJT, which is on the job training. And I had to do that at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And he had just completed his humanitarian move to Eglin Air Force Base, which is in the Panhandle of Florida, which is the closest he could get to my home unit near Jacksonville. And I was like, okay, well, when do I need to go? And they were like, well, we need you to do it before the end of the fiscal year. So during the summer and early fall, I went, and it's everything sucked, and it was hard, mostly because of PT, physical training, and all that kind of stuff. But then it it got way suckier. And that same year, I lost my grandfather. And I almost start crying harder at that because I'm so close to him. And it's so many years with him. And he was so far away from me when it happened that I never got to say goodbye, never really had closure at his funeral. It didn't really go the way that I would have pictured. So it never really felt like the end for me. But just like Torrin back in January, I had amazing leadership who was like, they like saw me after the phone call and my mom told me, and my NCOIC at first was like, okay, just shut your stuff down, and then he like thought for about a split second more and was like, just go pack up your stuff. We've got it. Drive safe. Just, call us in a few days. And every single person I worked with, even though I had only worked with them for like 2.5, 3 months, every single one of them texted me on my drive down there. It was like, hey, I don't expect a response.
Damn it, Aeryn.
They were all like, I don't expect a response. I hope you're okay. Please drive safe. Let us know in a few days when you'll be back.
That's the military that I know and love.
Right? I'm like, that's the kind of resiliency that we need in the military. Not this whole like, oh, go to this training and do this and, take one day off work, but you still have to come into work and, No, we need the airmen and the soldiers and the sailors and the Marines who look out for each other, who send each other home when shit is hitting the fan. That's what we need.
And to be able to recognize that in another person, there's a big difference between someone screaming, I need help, to someone internalizing so much pain and another person being like, I see it, I see you, this is what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
Because you can, this is a very bad time to say this, but you can shout it from the rooftops and have someone hear it, or you can catch it ahead of time and not have to do that. You don't have to be there and talking someone down from an experience if you just treat people like people beforehand.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I haven't been through any of this. I haven't, Josh and I are not trying for kids. I got things in my arms to not have kids in Korea. But, all of this and you guys being, strong and vulnerable, it makes my future and, my worries when I am going to have children, it knocks them down to a minimum because I know I have strong women in my life that have been what do you need? Where are you at? What's on your brain? And then they're I hope I can be that to somebody else, when they're going through that experience too. I love you guys. No more crying because
There's going to be more.
Your story was surprisingly triggering to me in ways that I didn't expect. It brought up some memories that I totally forgot about, actually. One is that when I had my daughter, I totally forgot that that feeling of when they couldn't detect her heartbeat. And you mentioned the quietness, how all of a sudden the providers and the nurses are quiet,
Really silent.
And I remember when you mentioned that, I just had this flashback of when they had the monitor on my belly, and I guess the machine couldn't detect her heartbeat, so they came back in and they did the vaginal monitor.
Yeah.
And then I guess they had, and you're on some good drugs when you can't feel a vaginal monitor, So I guess
they're not comfortable for those of you that don't know.
So I had the vaginal monitor, and I guess the thing stopped detecting her heartbeat also because they came in again and they were doing stuff, and I remember that really uncomfortable silence of just machines.
Yeah.
And they're not telling you anything, but you feel a a sudden panic in the room.
Yeah, and they like don't look at you either.
Yeah.
Like they look over you, or they like look at parts of you, but they don't look at you because they know it's all in their face.
And then I did end up having an emergency C-section with Kennedy, but in the joy that is having the baby and having a healthy baby, like I completely like kind of, I guess, chopped that piece of my labor and delivery out. And when you said that, I was like, oh shit, like that was like a whole thing. So yeah, that's that scary silence and then it made me think about my great grandmother, who I found out she had 5 children, and my grandmother was the only one who made it to adulthood, the only one. She lost all her babies as infants except for my grandmother. So I'm like, I can't imagine having 5 children and only one making it. So thank you for sharing, Aeryn. I know that's not easy, but you know, the strength of you to be other people's angels.
Thanks for tuning in to part 2 of our pregnancy and infant loss episode. Stay tuned for the rest of the week to see the rest of the episode. Thanks, guys.